Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Gabriel and this is my very first instructional video. Before we do anything else, let's tune up. And this is your high E. And B. G. D. A. And E. The reason why I wanted to do this video dates back like 15-20 years when I was listening to my heroes, let's say for instance country great Albert Lee, and wondering how he found all these great notes that seemed to be outside of the key he was playing in but still would fit the chords perfectly. Like many of these great players, he could not really explain that himself. It is all intuition. But I searched for years, and what I will try to show you today is what I came up with. For me, it's the way of thinking. It's not like the truth or anything. It's just a way of approaching it. And I do it by looking at chords in two ways. The first way would be to look at it as its own harmonic center, regardless of the key it's in. The other way would be the opposite, every chord as in a key. What I will use today to show this point is using the three chords of maybe the most common chord progression of all, the 12-bar blues. And in the 12-bar blues we have, if we were in the key of A, we would have A7, we would have D7, and we would have E7. Like I said, we have three dominant 7 chords, and the dominant 7th chord is found only once in every major key. And if the key were, for instance, A major, we would find that the only dominant 7 chord we would have in that key would be E7. It would always be on the 5th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be an E. There we have an E7. E7 is the only dominant chord in A major. To any dominant 7 chord, the root of the major scale would be a 5th down. So if we have A7, D7, and E7, we could imagine new roots. For the A7, you would then imagine a 5th down, the D. So therefore, the first choice of scale for a dominant 7 chord would be, if we have an A7 chord, the D major scale. In modal language, that will be the Mixolydian scale, if you have heard that before. Let me show you how that would sound. To that sound, you could think that there is something missing, and the old bebop players would then add to this one note, one important note. That would be the minor third. This would create new scale called the bebop scale, which is really a Mixolydian scale with an added minor third. Let me show you how that would sound. I find that there is one more crucial note to add here, and that would be the really blue note, the flat 5, which in the key of A would be E flat. So we would now have the blues bebop scale. That's really not a term that's used, but let me introduce it now. The blues bebop scale, which would then be a Mixolydian scale with an added minor third and an added flat 5. Let me show you what that would sound like. Okay, let me rewind that. That would then be the blues bebop scale, which would be the Mixolydian scale with an added minor third and an added flat 5, which is the same in A as a D major scale with an added C and an added E flat. So in this first way of thinking, we would use this scale over each chord. That means for the A chord, we would use A blues bebop scale. For the D chord, we would use D blues bebop scale. And for the E, we would use E blues bebop scale. Let me demonstrate that for you once, and we will then look at in which ways that is good and which way that maybe has some shortcomings. That was me trying to be clear about which scale I was using and when. This is where I would need to incorporate the other way of thinking, as each chord reflecting back on the key, the root of the key you're in. And one important thing to notice is when you change from the A7 chord to the D7 chord, the 7th note of the D chord, which will be a C, would then be the minor third of the key root A. This gives us an opportunity to distinguish the first chord from the second chord. And that would be to maybe play with a more major feel on the first chord and a more minor feel on the second chord. You see, the dominant 7th chord is interesting in many ways. And one way is that although it has a major third, it sounds really great with the minor third playing over it. Anyways. strangely enough, and that creates, you know, the really bluesy sound. So for the first chord, you can really choose if you want to play with a more major feel or a more minor feel. Maybe I should demonstrate that. We'll do just that. So for the first chord, the A7 chord, you have more than one approach available. You could either go with a more major feel, or with a more minor feel, or somewhere in between, using the major pentatonics, the minor pentatonics, or the blues bebop scale, which holds all of those notes in one. So when the D chord comes around, the D7 chord comes around, the seventh of that chord would then be C, which is the minor third of the root A, which is an opportunity to make the sound more minor. So I would personally prefer to play maybe a little bit more to the major side for the first chord, to have the possibility to play more minor to the second chord, the D chord. That would sound like this.